And we are now on screen. So once again, everyone who is joining who knows me, it's Lindsay Dwyer. I'm the Geek Girl at Keller Williams. Thanks for joining again. And today I have Geraldine Peterson, who is a licensed mental health counselor. If you can take a moment to just introduce yourself.
Oh my goodness, starting off with a hard one already.
Yes.
I'm Geraldine Peterson, and I'm a counselor. I've been a counselor for over 20 years. I love doing counseling work. I also teach parenting classes, and I love teaching the parenting classes. I don't know what else to say other than that.
Well, anyone who wants to ask any questions, please feel free to comment with your questions. It will take a couple of minutes for us to see them because there is a bit of a delay. Emerald says good luck, by the way.
Oh, I can't see comments. Is there a way I can see comments?
If you go onto my Facebook page.
Oh, I'm not going to,
Yeah.
I'll mess it up if I try to do it.
And then beyond that, so yeah, there's a couple minutes delay. So, and I also want to say that answers are not one size fits all when it comes to anything related to mental health. What works for one
Absolutely.
person does not work for everyone.
Yep.
So to start off with, how has your day-to-day changed since the stay home, stay healthy order?
The biggest thing about my day-to-day that has changed has been I'm doing most of my sessions telehealth, just like this. I'm not a super tech savvy person, so we've had a couple of glitches I've had a couple of glitches trying to connect with clients, but mostly it's gone okay. I do see a couple of clients still in my offices, depending on whether they're feeling healthy and safe doing so, and I Lysol the office between each client. But most clients are happy to do telehealth or telephone conversations or telephone sessions. And the insurance companies have been very good about authorizing that. Typically, in order to do that, you have to get authorized by each insurance company in order to get paid to do that. And during the coronavirus, the isolation or the quarantine, they've just said, everybody is blanket authorized. Please see people telehealth if you can. But I've seen,
That's really nice.
Yeah, it is really nice. I've seen just about as many clients. And the other thing that has changed is just about every client in every session has talked in some way about how either the coronavirus scare or listening to the news or the isolation or sometimes the opposite of isolation, sometimes being too many people being around is affecting their mental health issues.
So kind of jumping off of that, how is coronavirus affecting the world's mental health, do you think? I've heard some say it is a type of world grief.
I've heard that too, and I don't know that I would pick the word grief. I would certainly pick the word adjustment. Grief, if you think of grief as a big change, yeah, I'd call it grief. I think we're all adjusting. We're all being forced to see the world in a different way. And none of us really like our world to be shaken up. We like to think that the patterns and the structures we have set up is just the way the world is, and then something comes along like this that shows us it's not necessarily the same. It's not necessarily what we think it is. So any period of adjustment is difficult and brings up any mental health issues people already have. It makes them just a little worse. And yeah, I think similar to grief, people are feeling all those feelings that you feel during grief. They feel a sense of bewilderment or disbelief or denial. They feel a sense of sadness for sure. They feel a sense of anger sometimes. And sometimes they feel a sense of okayness about it as well. And they used to talk about this people going through stages of grief, and I don't think it's stages. I call it a meteor storm of emotions. So sometimes anger can hit us out of the blue, or sadness or disbelief can just hit us out of the blue, and it just feels like they happen to us whenever they feel like it. So I think people are having difficulty adjusting to what's going on by having a lot of different emotions hitting them randomly.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
So why some people would identify it with grief.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so I know I personally am getting weepy every few days.
yeah.
Um, and that's kind of I always have that sort of release valve type of weepiness.
Hmm.
So now I'm making myself take days off. We kind of talked about this before going live.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and it seems like a lot of people that are making the rapid switch to online work are suddenly feeling burnout this week. What advice do you have for anyone dealing with burnout? This is for you real estate agents out there that I know are dealing with burnout.
What we talked about before we went on air is both you and I are in different ways scheduling time for ourselves. I'm putting in my daily schedule 1 hour to take a walk. If I don't put it in my schedule book, I forget to do it. And then it's 8 o'clock at night and I haven't gone for a walk, or I go 2 or 3 days and I haven't gone for a walk. So I think it's important to schedule that time, that self care time. And I also think it's important to do the self care or the day off or the hour off or however you choose to do that before you actually need it. There's a saying I like. I never say sayings exactly how they were originally said, but it's something along the lines of, to make perfect toast, you burn it and then subtract 20 seconds. So in self care, you don't want to get to the burnout point and then try to take care of yourself, because of course you can't burn the toast and then subtract 20 seconds. You want to hit that um, time before the toast gets burnt or before you feel burnt out. You actually want to take care of yourself 20 minutes before that happens or 2 days before that happens. So you want to take care of yourself before you reach that burnout point.
Makes sense. And there's actually a saying, like a bold law for Keller Williams that is, if it's not in your schedule, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, yeah,
So remember, self-care, if it's not in your schedule, it doesn't exist.
yeah. And it's the last thing you do. And then it becomes 8 o'clock and you haven't gone for your walk of the day.
Mhm. Um, so some people I've talked to have had overwhelming anxiety that has kept them from jumping into virtual connection. Like not necessarily like a fear of video calling or, talking on the phone, but a general anxiety that is leading them to digitally self-isolate. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts on this?
I think whenever something dramatic changes in your life and you have to do something a different way, the more you can keep things as similar as how you did them before, the easier it is to transition. So, for example, if I always go to a movie with my friends on Saturday afternoons, then I would pick Saturday afternoons as the time to Zoom with my friends, to communicate with my friends. If I usually have meetings at 9 o'clock in the morning, then 9 o'clock in the morning would be the time that I communicate with people. So to keep the timing the same, if you can't keep um, how you talk to the person or how you interact with people the same, maybe keep the timing the same or keep um, the activity the same, or the number of people or the same people who get together the same. Um, so to keep as many things as similar as possible will help decrease that anxiety. Uh, and sometimes I think you just have to like jump over that initial feeling of anxiety and recognize that that feeling is uh, going to go away in a minute or two. So to jump in, reach out to people, and then once you start interacting with people, that anxiety will lower.
It's great to hear. I think that uh, I know I personally have been really benefiting from some like online happy hours with my office,
Uh-huh.
and that's been my one saving grace. One, it's an event that I'm not in control of, so I don't feel overwhelmed by having to run it.
Right. Hmm.
And I can jump in and we just laugh and have fun. And no work allowed.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And again, you have to schedule that in. A lot of times
Yes.
people think they have to be productive in order to feel good about what they're doing, and they forget that the walk that I take every day or the happy hours actually keep us healthy and help
Mhm.
us be productive at other times in our day. And if we don't do those things, we're not going to be productive at other times in our day.
Yeah, that actually leads in perfectly to the next question,
Oh, okay,
which
good.
is um, I've seen some posts talking about needing to learn a new skill or get something done during stay at home. What are your thoughts on these posts? And the general idea says that if you don't learn a new skill, time wasn't the problem, it was willpower.
Mm.
I have a lot of thoughts on this personally, so.
I do too. I think to me that statement says more about um, it, it has the tendency is then that the person hearing that statement would feel guilty. And I don't know that that helps anybody. Just to feel guilty about what they're not doing isn't necessarily helpful. Um, I think if you set a goal and don't do it, people tend to jump and think that you don't have enough willpower. And I think there are a lot of reasons that people set goals and don't meet them. Willpower, I think, rarely is the problem. Um, so I think we all need to be gentle with ourselves in the goals that we set. And if we set a goal and don't meet a goal, it, it's easy to blame ourselves or to hear other people try when they try to blame us and say, "Oh, you must not be trying hard enough. You must not have enough willpower." But instead, just to look at what are the things that are getting in the way. If you're tired, maybe you just need more rest, and it's not the time to learn a new skill or to do something productive. Or if maybe you don't have enough time, there, even though more people are staying at home, life is still busy. We still have things that we need to do, and maybe we don't have enough time to learn that skill that someone else might be imposing on us that we should be learning. So, what are your thoughts on that? You said you had a lot of thoughts on that.
Well, I one of my favorite sayings from a book called The One Thing is that willpower is not always on will call. So
I like that. Uh-huh.
yes, it's all about building the habits. So like the first, however, we call it a 66-day challenge
Mm-hmm.
to hit that habit threshold,
Mm-hmm.
and then that way you don't have to rely on willpower after that. Um,
Absolutely.
mhm.
So, I have seen so many people come into counseling with tremendous determination and tremendous willpower and tremendous desire to change, and still not be able to change without some help or some support or some skills or some other things. So I very rarely see that the problem is lack of willpower. Um, and also, I took this training once. I can't remember what it was called, but it was something about willpower or the myth of willpower or something like that. And the trainer asked for a show of hands and asked the audience, how many of you have set a uh, New Year's resolution that you were determined to keep and then actually kept that New Year's resolution? And of course, maybe two hands out of 500 went up. And then the presenter asked, how many of you brushed your teeth this morning? And of course, everybody's hand, except for maybe one or two people's, went up. And then the presenter went on to talk about changing habits and meeting goals isn't about that first initial push of determination. It's about developing a habit. And we all brush our teeth because we've developed that habit of brushing our teeth, not because we think every morning, I'm determined not to get a cavity or I don't want to go to the dentist. We brush our teeth because we've developed a habit. And the best way to develop a habit is to start with a tiny change. So if you want to develop, um, so I'll tell you my story. that I tell a lot of my clients, and it's a personal story. Uh, at one time in my life, I was eating very unhealthily, and I decided I wanted to start to develop the habit to eat healthier. And if I had on that day said, okay, I'm going to eat 5 vegetables a day and 3 fruits a day, and not eat sugar anymore, just like they tell you to do, that would have probably lasted about 3 hours, and then I would have eaten a piece of cake and said I'm a failure and never done anything. So instead of doing that, the first thing I did was when I ate Kraft macaroni and cheese, which is probably one of the unhealthiest things for you, I would add frozen peas to the Kraft macaroni and cheese, and that was my vegetable.
Mm-hmm.
Now, nobody is going to say that's a great habit. Kraft macaroni and cheese with peas mixed in it is not a healthy meal. But I moved from that to then eating peas with cheese melted on top of it. And then a week or so later, it was just peas with a lot of butter on top of it. And then a week or so later, it was raw peas. And I did that with just about every food. Instead of jumping from Kraft macaroni and cheese to raw broccoli, that's just not going to work. I just made small changes. And then over the course of time, it becomes a habit. And it's very easy right now. I haven't had Kraft macaroni and cheese in probably 25 years. So, and I have no desire to eat Kraft macaroni and cheese. But again, if I'd have started that first day saying, I will never eat Kraft macaroni and cheese again, I'm determined never to do that again, it would have lasted a day.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I recently read Atomic Habits.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of books coming out about habit. There's also one called Tiny Habits. I haven't heard of Atomic Habits.
It's really popular in the business world now,
Okay,
and it has habit stacking, so you make a small habit and then stack something else on top of it. Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
and I've also really enjoyed if they the suggestion that if you can't do the full way habit, and like so one day maybe you can go run for an hour.
Hmm.
Um, can you do that every day? When you start off, probably not. So
Right.
force yourself to stop after like putting on your workout clothes.
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very similar to the tiny habit theory or the theory I was just talking about. It's pretty much the same. The the most important thing is developing a new neural pathway, a new pathway in your head that says, it's morning time, it's time to brush my teeth, or it's meal time, it's time to eat a vegetable. And the way to develop a new neural pathway is to create a pattern of success. So, one of the things you want to do in creating a new habit is setting goals that are you're going to be about 90% successful at meeting. So, if I set a goal to run for an hour a day, right now in my life, I have maybe a 2% chance of doing that. But if I set a goal to walk an hour a day, I have about a 75% chance of doing that. And if I set a goal for moving my body once a day, I have a 99% chance of doing that. So once I move my body every day, I've developed that pattern of knowing that I'm going to move my body every day. And then I can add to that goal of how much I move my body every day or how hard I push it every day. And by taking all those tiny little steps, you move from eating Kraft macaroni and cheese to eating raw peas.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like makes me think of video game tutorials
Uh-huh.
where they start you off with the very basic thing and then they slowly introduce the more complicated aspects.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's fun. That's the other part of it is it's so much more fun to set smaller goals that you know you're going to be successful at and feel like a success for 3 months and that change sticks for the rest of your life than to set a huge goal with great determination that is so far beyond your reach that you fail and then you feel like a failure and the goal doesn't stick anyway. So
Mhm.
not only is it more effective, it's actually more fun. People love video games partly
Yes.
because of that is the goals are set so that they're a little bit challenging, but they're definitely attainable. So you feel like a success.
Mhm.
And then you go to a tougher level. It's a little more challenging, but you're still able to feel like a success.
And when I first started really trying to stack habits, I used online, it was called Habitica at the
Uh-huh.
time, Habit
Yeah.
RPG. That was great for me to get started. I This is way back when I first found out I had ADHD, and it's like, oh, I can finally get the habit started because now I
Yeah.
know how to work with my brain, and I
Yeah.
was able to consistently do things for like the first time, and it gave me little rewards, and I could choose my rewards too.
Absolutely. I'm familiar with Habitica and I love it. And I love the idea of rewards. And so you talked about video games. If you think about how people develop habits, nobody has to force anybody to play a video game. And yes, they're fun, but part of the reasons why people like video games is they get all these little bells and dings and whistles and little stars or hearts. Basically, all these little rewards that makes continuing to do something really fun, and you develop that habit. I'm I'm of an age when I was in high school, I took typing class. It was the most boring class you can imagine. We sat at typewriters and we had to type out, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog like 50 times. It was the most boring thing ever. And I eventually learned to type pretty slowly. And now most 8-year-olds type faster than I type because when they use a computer, they get little rewards. They get to see a picture, they get, something pops up on the screen. And it just shows how fun meeting goals can be. To meet a goal in such a tedious way, you might get there eventually, but number one, it's no fun. Number two, it takes longer, and number three, you never meet it quite as well as you do as if the process were actually fun and filled with rewards. I'm a big believer in rewarding people for doing things, rewarding yourself for doing things, and rewarding other people for doing things.
I love it.
Yeah, I like Habitica. Yeah.
I've kind of taken that same idea for a lot of my reminders now. I put video game noises on them.
I like it.
That way I never get grumpy when I hear that, like, oh, I just got something cool.
Yes, man. If I could do that for house cleaning. They actually did this study with advertising, uh, and every advertiser knows this is exactly how it works. Is you link a product with a reward, whether that reward is approval or someone smiling. It doesn't have to be a big reward, but when people feel rewarded, they buy your product.
Mhm.
So, and again, a reward doesn't have to be a trip to Disneyland. It can be a ding or a bell or a whistle or a smile or, eye contact
Mhm.
or checking it off a list on Habitica or even on a piece of paper. Yeah, a
Mhm.
reward doesn't have to be huge.
So, um, that that little tangent for willpower. Um, See, the next question I had written down. So in general, what advice do you have for managing the anxiety that has come in the wake of COVID-19?
So it's interesting that you said you enjoyed happy hours because you didn't have to plan them. Um, so there are different things that people can do to manage anxiety. Some people actually like to really be in control of something when they're faced with a situation that they have no control over. So I don't have any control over COVID-19. I don't have any control over um, what the economy is doing. I don't have any control over who gets sick. I don't have any control um, over so many things because of this, when the quarantine is lifted. So when we feel like we have no control, a lot of times people feel less anxiety if they find something they do have control over, which is why a lot of women in particular, when they get anxious, they clean something. I can't control the world, but by gosh, I can clean this silverware drawer and get it nice and organized. And that's a great way to manage anxiety, is to find something in your life that you can control and take control of that. Um, the the other thing that's causing a lot of anxiety is that people are um, watching watching the news, I think, too much. Um, so I've talked to a lot of clients in particular about really limiting how much information they're exposing themselves to, particularly information that they can't do anything about. If they want to watch the news about what they're supposed to be doing, whether, you know, what stores are open or where they can go, or uh, what to be careful about, that's great. But it really doesn't change my life any to hear about how many people have contracted the virus in New Hampshire. That doesn't affect my life. I don't need to hear that. And that just causes anxiety. So to really limit how much you're exposing yourself to information that isn't helpful to you. So anxiety basically is when anxiety happens when we're faced with information or a situation that our brain says is dangerous or might be dangerous. And then that anxiety is there to tell our brains to take action. And when there's no action to take, that anxiety just hovers around and stays in our brain and makes us horribly uncomfortable. So if there's no action to take, limit the amount of information that you really don't need. Or if you are hearing that information and you can't take specific action about that information, take some action that makes you feel that you have some power and control in this world. Like so many people are doing things, they're decorating their windows with flowers or teddy bears or things like that, or making face masks, or making plans to donate blood. And I think that's important to do. But the anxiety that's most problematic is when our brain is saying, you need to take action, but there's no real action to take. And right now, there isn't a whole lot of action each individual can take about the situation in the world. But we can take action about the people we interact with, and our families, and reaching out to our friends, or cleaning a silverware drawer.
Mm-hmm. So this kind of moving on from the anxiety part of it, you have recently written a parenting book that you are working on getting published, correct?
Uh-huh.
Can you tell us what the book is about?
I can, for probably 3 hours, tell you what the book is about. I love talking about parenting. So there's a couple of main concepts in the book. The first one being the concept that the more mistakes your children make as children, when you actually have some influence over them, the better. So mistakes aren't problems. Mistakes are actually, you actually want your children to make mistakes because that gives you an opportunity to teach them. So if a child steals something at 6, it's easier to deal with than if the first time a child ever steals something, they're 17. You've lost a whole lot of influence. So I'm not saying we want 6-year-olds to go out and steal things. But when your 6-year-old steals something at 6, instead of being upset, say, to think, I'm so glad that this happened because now I have an opportunity to teach. And in general, that's true at any age. So one of the concepts in the book is the importance of looking at the mistakes your children make as learning opportunities and teaching opportunities, rather than as a failure on your part as a parent or a failure on your child's part, because they're still children. They don't know much better. Another big concept in the book is comparing parenting to teaching. So what I ask in my parenting classes, what I ask the people who attend the parenting classes to think of their favorite teacher and to think of the attributes of that teacher. And when I say their favorite teacher, a teacher that actually taught them something, who was actually a good teacher, but who also made them feel respected and they felt comfortable around. And most people can think of a teacher like that. And when you think of the attributes of a teacher, so can you think of a favorite teacher that actually you felt did a good job in actually teaching you whatever subject they were teaching, but also you really liked?
Yes, that actually had one of them on stream last week.
Oh, cool.
Yes,
So what,
Andrew Giddings. Yeah.
okay. So what attributes, what would you say were there, what were they like? How would you describe them?
Uh, so one, it was creative writing class, so it
Mm-hmm,
was a little bit different as far as what was needing to be taught.
mm-hmm,
And they were just very open to creativity and bouncing ideas back and forth. That
mm-hmm,
was the
mm-hmm,
main thing, I think. And just wanted to, like, was always interested in hearing everyone's stories and just
mm-hmm.
talking and communicating.
Okay. So when you had an assignment, did you feel like they're making me do this, or did you feel I can't wait to do this so that I can show, what was her name, Andrea?
Oh, Andrew.
Andrew, sorry.
Yes.
I can't wait to do this to show Andrew.
Yeah, it was that. I couldn't
That's
wait.
it, right?
Yeah.
So to think that's pretty much what we want our children to feel instead of making them feel, my mother's making me, brush my teeth or eat broccoli. If we ask our children to share their story and how they feel about broccoli, they're going to be more likely to say, oh, okay, I know I have to do this, instead of thinking, oh, you're making me do this. So when most people describe their favorite teachers, they don't describe a teacher who let them get away with everything. They describe a teacher who was tough and had expectations and had kept control, but also someone who is really interested in hearing what they had to say, even if it wasn't creative writing, even if it was, trigonometry. Um, my cat's going to come and jump in the screen any minute now. He's behind the computer making it wobble. But I did, math was not one of my favorite things to do, but I did have a trigonometry teacher who would make the story problems, she would insert the student's name in the story problems. So she would say, Geraldine is going to fly to the sun and needs to figure out the degree to the sun. And Bob, who's sitting next to her, is going with her and and just by putting our names and making it personal and interesting and fun, made it easier to learn. Trigonometry was still hard, but I didn't feel like my teacher was making me do something just to please the teacher. I actually wanted to please the teacher. And so the word discipline, when people think of the word discipline in parenting, they tend to think of, well, let me ask you this. What do you think of when you think of a parent imposing discipline on a child? What comes to your mind?
Being grounded.
Yep. So usually they think punishment, right?
Mhm.
But the word discipline actually means, so disciple means student. So discipline is actually treating someone like a student. So another concept in the book is how discipline isn't, if you think of discipline as teaching rather than discipline as punishment, your children not only learn better, but they actually are excited about learning, just like you were excited about learning creative writing. And I wasn't super excited about learning trigonometry, but I was more excited about learning trigonometry because my teacher made it fun and made it personal and was um, and knew that some students didn't like it and was okay with that. She was there like, yes, math is tough, you know. So I think if you think about the word self-discipline too, we don't think self-discipline is punishing ourselves. We think of self-discipline as being strong and um, respecting our journey and respecting our challenges and challenging ourselves, but also being gentle with ourselves. So if we think about raising our children that way, um, again, it works better and it's more fun.
I
So
really like that.
yeah, I like it too. And just like counseling, every time I teach a parenting class or talk to people about parenting, I like what you said at the beginning of of this hour. It's never a one size fits all. You know, you parent the best you can. You know yourself best. You know your kids best. People have different styles. There's a lot of ways to parent well. There really are. So you have to pick things that make sense to you. Um, the other thing, another big concept in the book is the concept about really listening to the feelings behind uh, what people call misbehavior, whatever behavior you don't want your child to do. Um, so I'll tell a story about uh, me and Emerald, my daughter, is just like almost every parent who takes a child to a store. I remember once we were grocery shopping and she was, I don't know, 6 years old and was saying, I want this, buy me this. I want candy, buy me candy. And me saying, no, no, we can't have that. We can't do this. We can't have this. Why do you keep asking for things? You know, we can't have it. And I kind of had this insight or this revelation. I kind of went, wait a minute, I want all those things too. Why am I chastising her for wanting those things? I want, you know, we were at Fred Meyer's, so I saw clothes that I wanted that I couldn't afford at that point. And absolutely, I wanted everything chocolate that I saw, but that's not what I bought. So instead of going against a very normal feeling of wanting things, is I gave her an imaginary magic wand, and I gave myself an imaginary magic wand because I couldn't have her touching things at the store because you can't let kids touch things in
Yes.
stores, even not even counting the coronavirus,
Yes.
because they just knock things over. So we would just take our magic wand and point it at everything we want. So instead of going to the grocery store and having her say, I want this, and me saying, you can't have it, we went to the grocery store and she would wave her magic wand and say, I want that. And I would say, cool, I want this. And we would just continue shopping and following our list. Just because she wanted it didn't mean I had to buy it. And it made shopping really fun. And we were able to actually talk about the things we liked and the things we wanted, but also learn that just because we want something doesn't mean we need it. We can tolerate wanting something and not getting it. So it made shopping fun. It was an opportunity to teach many lessons about clarification of what's important to us, lessons about delayed gratification, lessons about budgeting, not just budgeting money, but budgeting, you know, actually every time we went to the store, we each got one treat, you know, so you had to really think about what treat you wanted that to be. So there were a lot of lessons that we were able to work on shopping in a really, really fun way because magic wands are fun, you know. So uh, a big concept is that if you think about the feeling your child is having, you realize that it's a feeling that everybody has. Everybody goes to the store and wants tons of things that they can't afford, you know. everybody wants to win the lottery. That's not a problem. So to acknowledge that, and instead of making that the problem, thinking of a creative and fun way to turn that into a lesson.
Yeah, that's I really like that reframing. That it's uh, something that I have never heard anything like that before as far as for wants. I've heard it for,
Yeah.
different things like reframing,
Hmm.
um, goals, that sort of thing. But reframing for wants is really interesting, and I think my parents would have really liked that.
I had a client who was like maybe so I saw the mom whose daughter was like 14, and the 14-year-old daughter wanted to move to New York and become an actress. And the mother was ridiculously worried about this because, New York, she's not going to be able to afford it. It's dangerous. She's probably not going to become an actress. And I said, she's 14 though. Is she really going to move there tomorrow? She's not going to do that. And haven't you ever dreamed, like I dream of going to Iceland? I might or might not make it there. So we talked about dreams, and I said, if she were 18 and actually planned
Uh-oh, I looks like lost connection.
about how fun it
Okay,
is,
there we go.
yeah, you froze for a second. Yeah.
Yes.
Talk to her instead about how fun it is. Work out a budget with her. Explore acting classes. And so they spent, I don't know how long, the mom spent time talking to her 14-year-old about that as a dream. And they, number one, had great interactions and had lots of fun. Number two, by the time the girl was 15, she had lost interest in that. So it went away anyway. And part of the reason it went away might have been because they actually did some research and they looked into budgeting and how much an apartment costs in New York and, you know, uh, the percentage, how much work it was to be an actor. And I don't even remember now if she took some acting classes and recognized that it really wasn't what she wanted to do. So, and again, it's much more fun. And it's fun to dream. That doesn't mean that you are going to necessarily accomplish that, but that doesn't mean you should stop dreaming about it.
Hmm,
So,
very interesting. Yeah, that's makes me just feel happy. It's a good. I think anyone in from Keller Williams would get the chili bumps. It's one of the main people from the international named Mo Anderson, and her goosebumps. She gets chili bumps.
oh, that's cool. I like that. Yeah.
See, so on the topic of parenting, so what advice do you have for parents when it comes to managing their own anxieties relating to COVID-19 while supporting their children?
So I think in managing your own anxiety, it is important to um, to do the things we've talked about. Take some time out for yourself. Limit how much you're watching the news. Kids will pick up on your kids will pick up on their parents' anxiety, and if the words coming out of your mouth are everything's okay, but the feeling your kids are getting is that things aren't okay, they'll sense that. So the same thing is true in talking with kids um, about what's going on. As is the same thing is true about that is managing your own anxiety. Give them something that they do feel they can control. Um, you do want to give them information, but not so much information that's overwhelming. Um, and on that note, the best way to know how much information to give a child is to let them talk and not jump in too quickly. I think parents a lot of times think kids' worries are much bigger than kids' worries actually are. When kids say things like, I'm afraid, I'm going to get the virus and die. The parent starts talking about death and how the percentages of getting the virus. And really, maybe the kid's really worried that they're not going to be able to see their friends again if they don't really understand those bigger concepts. So if a child asks a question, it's more important to say something like, tell me a little more about that, or that's an interesting question, or I'm wondering why you're asking that, or to get a better sense of what they're actually asking rather than to jump in and assume that they're much more frightened than they actually are. Because kids' worries sometimes are very simple, like if we've run out of toilet paper in all the stores, what if they run out of my favorite cereal? And then what am I going to have for breakfast? And all of a sudden we've talked to them about virus and you know infection and all that, and really they're worried about their cereal. So to make sure you keep reflecting back um, their questions to them until you get a sense of what they're actually asking about. I do think it's important to give kids time and opportunity to express their fears and not ignore them. And I do think, just like with us getting accurate information that we can actually take action on, kids need accurate information that they can take action on. And if there's not accurate information, give them some information that they can take action on. So if they ask when am I going back to school, and you're not sure when they're going back to school, you can say, I don't know when you're going back to school, but I do know that you need to read for a half hour every day. And what time would you like to read? At 3 o'clock or at 4 o'clock? So to give them some choices about that, but to say, this is what we do know, and this is what you can do. You can read for a half hour a day. You can, do math for this long a day. To make sure they have a sense of having some control in their lives.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. It's like the same sort of like take control of what you can
Mm-hmm.
and offering options to kids to do the same thing, whereas they
Yeah,
would not necessarily be able to control that themselves.
yeah. So to have control over when or how you do something, not actually if they do something. When parents give kids choices, that's been a kind of a thing that parents are told, give kids choices. Sometimes parents think it's a choice about whether the child actually does it. It's not that. It's, you have to clean your room. Do you want to do it listening to music, or do you want to do it quietly? Do you want to do it before dinner, or do you want to do it after dinner? Um, you do have to do your homework or read or whatever. Would you like to do that in the living room, or would you like to do that in your bedroom? But it's not a question about whether you're going to actually read. You are going to read, but you have control. The child can have some control about how or where they do that.
There's actually someone that I am friends with, and what he's done with his daughter is for their lesson plans for the
Mm-hmm.
next day, they sit down and they decide it together.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So it
And
kind of
again,
echoes that.
she's probably much more interested in that because she's participating.
Mhm.
Just like your creative writing class, it's a little easier to get students to participate, but my trigonometry teacher figured out a way to get people involved and to be a participant in the math story problems. I say as I roll my eyes, I still don't like trigonometry, but I worked for her. I got better grades I still remember her. I mean, that was 30 years ago or so. And I still remember her because she made trigonometry fun.
Actually, it's perfectly into the next question that I have.
Okay.
So I talked to two teachers last week during the Q&A who recommended parents take the time to not teach school things
Mm-hmm.
necessarily while their children are home. So what sort of learning or play would you recommend from the counseling side?
So I think mostly just being open to um, talking about feelings or talking about fears or that meteor storm of feelings that kids might be having instead of trying to ignore them. Um, and again, I think the more you can reflect back and find a core commonality of feeling, we may all be anxious about different things, but everybody understands what it is to be anxious. We all may want different things when we go to Fred Meyer's, but we all know what it means to want something that we can't have. We all may feel different levels of anxiety over isolation, but we all know what it feels like to not be able to do something we want to be able to do. So
Mhm.
just to have conversations about that. Um, there's something that Neil deGrasse Tyson says about science that I think is also true about mental health. Uh, when parents ask him, "How do I get my children interested in science?" he says, "You don't have to get your children interested in science. Your children are interested in science. You just have to not put things in their way." And I think the same is true about um, counseling things, talking about your feelings, acknowledging your feelings, managing your feelings. Kids are interested in that. Kids want to learn skills about that. We just don't want to get in their way. So we can have conversations about um, when I feel angry, this is what I do. What do you do when you feel angry? Or what do other people do? Or what are some other options to do when you feel angry? Just like we would do with people's favorite foods. I like chocolate. What's your favorite food? I like pizza. What do you like on your pizza? To have those conversations about feelings. I feel scared about these things. What things do you feel scared about? When I feel scared, these things make me feel better. What things make you feel better when you're scared? So to not be to not shy away from having those discussions and um, to not stand in the way of that exploration of what people are feeling, how they manage those feelings, what works, what doesn't work. And to go back to sometimes people make mistakes and that's a good thing. So if I feel, or if a child feels angry and throws a book across the room, we can say, well, I'm glad you did that when you were 5 and when I have some control over it. And we can have a discussion about it. What about that worked? What about that didn't work? What about that is okay? What about that isn't okay? What are some other options? Um, and it's not just 5. If they feel, if they respond to a feeling in an unhelpful way at 12, you still have some control. So you say, I'm glad you did that when you were 12 and not when you were 18. And if they're 18, you say, I'm glad you did that at 18 and not for the first time when you're 30 because I have more control. So just to be open to having those discussions. And I think it's a good time to do that because there are a lot of feelings, there's a lot of uncertainty. And I do think those feelings are kind of hitting people like a meteor storm. It's 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 not like everybody is feeling anxious all the time. Like you say, sometimes you break down in tears. Um, I definitely need more processing time, which is why I go for walks. I need more time for my brain to just wrap my head around what's going on. So different people need different things, and just to not be afraid to have conversations about that.
Yeah, I think that might be an interesting uh, thing to try and breach during this time because you're already stuck together. So,
Yep,
mhm.
yep, yep. There are also a lot of like conversation starting games that you can just ask. I like asking random questions. If you were an animal, what animal would you be? And you can find those just about anywhere. Uh, just questions that get the conversation starting. Some of the things I ask kids are, what does your face look like when you're angry? Or what does your face look like when you're sad? Um, or what does your face look like when you're sad at a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10? And what does your face look like when you're sad at a 3? Or what does your face look like when you're angry at a 10? What does your face look like when you're angry at a 2? What do you do when you're angry at a 10? What do you do when you're angry at a 5? What do you do when you're angry at a 2 that's helpful, you know?
Mm.
So I think just questions like that, just throwing out scenarios that you can talk about. Um, and again, we do this about a lot of things that other than feelings, we can do it about feelings too. We like daydreaming about what would you do if you won $1 million in the lottery? You know, what would you do if you won $100 in the lottery? What would you do if you won $10 million in the lottery? Those are fun questions to talk about. So if you can just talk about them in relation to feelings, it can be just as fun, and you can learn a lot, and you can teach a lot.
Excellent. So we're about to be wrapping up.
Okay.
Um, so do you have any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
I think, like when I talked about the parenting class, the first concept was how mistakes are opportunities. I think this is a difficult time for a lot of people, but I also do think it's a time, it's an opportunity. This situation is also an opportunity to help us reflect on what's important to us. Um, the things that I hear people worrying about, they do worry some about practical things, but mostly what I hear people missing and worrying about are relationships. Um, they're worried about relationships much more than they're worried about toilet paper, for example, even though that's kind of become overblown. But people are worried about maintaining relationships. People are worried about keeping in contact with people they care about. And I think this has given us an opportunity to remember that those are the things that are important to us. So it's irritating not being able to go out to Applebee's, but that's only irritating. What's really important to me is maintaining relationships in my life and staying close to people and making sure people know that I care about them, and um, thinking about things like that. So to look at this, while it is a difficult time for sure, to look at it also as an opportunity to clarify what's important to you. What's important to you is probably different than what's important to me, or maybe different than what's important to me, and that's okay. But this can help us clarify what is important to us.
I like that. Thank you so much. I'm going to go through my list of events real quick. So
Okay.
that is going to be we're through Wednesday now, so tonight that means that I have my Let's Chat session, which is for crafting, gaming, and planning RPGs, just voice chat in Discord. Then after that, it's Guild Wars 2 dailies, which is also through voice in Discord for anyone who is playing Guild Wars 2. Tomorrow I have my live paint along, which is I'll be painting miniatures, and mostly it's because I need to get a project done and I need to tell you guys that I'm going to do it so that I'll do it.
Get it on the schedule.
Yep. On Friday, there is from Operation Tungsten Light, another Facebook group. It's called From Craptacular to Spectacular, and it's about planning during all this. And it's from Maps Business Coach. So you'll have to check out their Facebook for that. Then there's Friday Night Magic, which is being held by Game On. From the South Hill Mall, they're doing it online, and it's going to be through Magic Arena and their Discord. So check out their Facebook page. 7 p.m. on Friday, I'm doing Guild Wars 2 Hangout, followed by Guild Missions. And Saturday, I've got a game night thing that I'm just barely getting started. This one is more one-on-one and small groups, so make sure that you reach out to me because this one is invite only, and I can talk to you about getting the invite for that. And then there's the Whitey One Nerd Caucus Game Night, which is Young Democrats of Washington. So if you're one of those and watching, make sure you go check out the Nerd Caucus page. And then there's the Bradford Loomis Virtual House Concert on Saturday, and that is being held by House Concert Fans and my friend Carmen Holtman. So make sure that you follow House Concert Fans to find out how to get into the Zoom link, because it is more about being a personal, you are attending a concert. It's not just watching a YouTube video or a YouTube live stream. And then Sunday, I'm still trying to find a DM for the tabletop RPGs. So if you want to run a D&D game or something else, any RPG, let me know. I will find the interested players for you, and that would be Sunday at 2. And there's a video game hangout after that, which is just in the Discord to try and find people for Overwatch, League of Legends, anything you might want to play. And then more Guild Wars 2 dailies, and then back to Monday with Let's Chat. And so that's all of the events coming up this week. Next week for the live Q&As, I'm really excited. I have a fitness instructor that I'll be talking to about exercises to do at home if you don't have the equipment, that sort of thing. I've also got a burlesque dancer who's going to talk about how to support performers while they are currently not able to do their shows. And also just any questions you might have about burlesque. I know it's a world that not a lot of people know about. I find it fascinating. I love seeing all of her costumes. They're amazing. And then on Thursday, still waiting to 100% confirm it, but I should be seeing an attorney that will talk about how things have changed in the courts in wake of coronavirus. So that is everything, I think. So thank you so much for for coming, Geraldine. I really appreciate it. And thank
Thanks,
you,
Lindsay.
Emerald, for
Fun.
making the link.
Thanks.
and and I'm going to go ahead and close out the stream. So thank you all for attending.
Bye bye.